This is episode 88 of the Why Not Me podcast, a sneak peek into the map of consciousness. I'm your host, Danita Bremer. In this podcast, I talk about creating generational ripples with Latter-day Saint moms who want to feel whole and be successful. Okay, ladies, and gents, I know there are some gentlemen out there that listen to the podcast. I don't want to overlook you. First of all, I really just had to hop on and record this podcast because it's mind-blowing to me, and I hope it'll be mind-blowing to you. But before I get there, don't forget to enter the podcast giveaway. I'm giving away a pair of second-generation Apple AirPods, and in order to qualify for the prize, you have to do 3.5 things. Listen to an episode, leave a 5-star rating, leave a review with at least one takeaway from an episode, and fill out a Google form. You should find the link to that Google form in the description of this podcast episode in whatever podcast platform you use. And you can also win if you refer someone to the podcast and they win. I will also send you a pair of Apple AirPods. So increase your odds of winning, tell all your friends, share on social media. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. Okay. I want to get to this episode, and it requires a little bit of a background. So I apologize for that, but I think you'll see why I'm so excited to record this episode for you. So first of all, I have this program coming up called Presence for Coaches. I do hope to create a program later on, hopefully next year, Presence for Moms. But for now, it is very clear to me how to deliver this content for coaches. And so I'm starting with coaches. And the whole idea behind this program is that our mere presence is a huge factor in helping other people heal and overcome their problems. Okay. So when we are more present, it's helpful in the world. It sends out a ripple effect into the world, a positive ripple effect. Okay. So that was kind of my hunch when I'm creating this program. And I've talked about this before. If you listened to the episode for coaches, I kind of outlined the program and all of that. But the main idea is that our very presence can help others create shifts in their lives, whether you're a coach or not. For coaches, this can be for your clients, but it can also be for your kids or whoever you are in relationship with. Okay, so put a pin in that idea. This is sort of my hunch. I don't have any data to back it up. I don't have, I haven't researched it. I haven't read a book that talks about this. It's just, I was asked if I would ever consider teaching how I coach. So I started thinking about, how is it that I coach? How do I hold space? How do I coach from the spirit? What exactly is it that I do? And I realized that presence is one of the foundational elements to how I coach. Okay, so then I signed up for a program, for a trauma certification program several months ago, and we started it this week. I've been so excited to start. The coach has been dropping pre-work, and I just love everything she does. And so I've been very, very thrilled and excited for our first class. And so this is Shyla Cash's program, Embodied Healing Systems. And the very first assignment that she gave us this week after our first class was to read chapter 1 of this book called The Map of Consciousness Explained. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm showing you the cover of the book. And I started reading. There's several pages, probably like 30 or 50 pages, that are a preface and an introduction. And me being the way I am, I have to read those first. And so I started reading them. And honestly, when I looked at this book, I thought it was going to be very like thick, like a college course. I thought it was going to be very technical, the map of consciousness explained, but it's actually very readable and very quick. And so I quickly got drawn into it. So I kind of outlined a few key concepts that I think is helpful to understand here. The first one is that according to Dr. David Hawkins, who's the author of this book, and he was born in the late 1920s. He passed away in 2012, but he had a full career and he spent a big portion of his career being a psychiatrist. After he quit psychiatry, he kind of went into research and developing this map of consciousness, which is what the book is all about. And one of the key foundational principles is that emotions have an energetic charge. We even talk about this in our pop culture. We talk about a vibe or good vibrations, right? When we're happy, it's like good vibrations. In addition to emotions each having their own energetic charge, each of us as humans are at a different energetic charge or frequency. Higher frequencies are more powerful than lower frequencies. And he delineates the difference between kind of this, there's this threshold with the frequencies in emotions between power and force. So power is always more powerful than force. So a lower frequency emotion like fear is going to come from force. A high frequency emotion like love is going to come from power. Okay. And power will always win over force. That's one of the principles he talks about in the introduction. And the kind of the point that he makes, and I'm going to read to you a couple pages out of this book, but one of the points he makes is that love is healing and it's backed by science. It's backed by behavioral kinesiology, okay, which is a field of science. Before I read to you this passage that kind of blew my mind and confirmed for me what I was already thinking, which is about this idea of presence being so critical and healing and really in and of itself being able to help our clients and help the people around us. There's a short paragraph in here that as a woman of faith was important for me to read. And so I want to share this with you as well. He said, and this is actually the editor of the book referring to what Dr. Hawkins says in his work. He said that what he teaches is not different from the core principles of the world's religions: unconditional love, compassion, humility, and kindness for all beings. Quote, make a gift of your life and lift all mankind by being kind, considerate, forgiving, and compassionate at all times, in all places, and under all conditions, with everyone as well as yourself. That is the greatest gift anyone can give. Close quote. So that is page 17 of the introduction of this book, The Map of Consciousness Explained by Dr. David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD. The subtitle is A Proven Energy Scale to Actualize Your Ultimate Potential. Okay. So it was important for me to have this context that what he is teaching in this map of consciousness is not different from the core principles that many of the world's religions teach, which is love and kindness and compassion, right? And how we make a difference in the world is by embodying those emotions and being those things. Yes. So I want to skip to this short section. And let's see, it's short. It's less than 3 pages. And then I will fill in the blanks about why this was so mind-blowing to me. Okay. This is part 1 called Foundations, but it's like a preface to part 1. So we're not yet in chapter 1. In the first 3 chapters, Dr. Hawkins gives the background science and main components of the map of consciousness. 2 of the key concepts you will encounter are attractor field and field of dominance. Here is a story from his clinical years as a psychiatrist that illustrates these concepts by showing that the attractor field of love is more powerful or dominant than that of fear. Betty was 34 years old, but she looked much older because she was thin and drawn. She entered the office carrying armloads of paper bags, which were later found to contain 56 different bottles of health store preparations, vitamins, and nutritional supplements, plus several bags of special food. Her fear had started out as a germ phobia, and soon everything around her seemed to be possibly contaminated with germs. She had many fears of contracting contagious diseases, which had progressed now to a fear of cancer. She believed every scare story she read, so she was afraid of nearly every food, the air she breathed, and getting sunshine on her skin. She wore white clothes because she was afraid of dyes in the materials. In the office, she would never sit down because she was afraid that the chair might be contaminated. Whenever she needed a prescription, she asked that it be written from the middle of the prescription pad, which had not yet been touched. Furthermore, she wanted to tear the page from the pad herself and didn't want me to touch it because possibly I had gotten germs from shaking hands with the last patient. She wore white gloves at all times. Ultimately, she requested to be treated by telephone as she was too afraid of making the trip into the office again. The following week on the phone, she said that she was afraid to get up. She called from home while still in bed because now she was afraid to go out on the streets. She had developed a fear of muggers, rapists, and air pollution. At the same time, she was afraid to stay home in bed and get worse. And to compound all her other fears, she was afraid that she was losing her mind. She was afraid that the medication wouldn't help her and that it might have side effects, but she was loath not to take it for fear that she would not get better. Now she said that she had a fear that she might choke on the pills and had stopped taking even her health supplements, much less the prescribed medication. Her fears were so paralyzing that every therapeutic maneuver was totally stymied. She wouldn't allow me to talk to her family. She was afraid that they would find out that she was seeing a psychiatrist and think she was crazy. I was totally baffled and racked my brain for weeks as to how I could possibly help her. Finally, I let go. I experienced the relief of surrender and that I just totally accepted this fact. There is absolutely nothing I can do to help her. The only thing left to do is just to love her. And so that's what I did. And I just thought of her lovingly and frequently sent her loving thoughts. I gave her as much love as I possibly could give when we talked on the telephone. And finally, after a couple of months of quote unquote loving therapy, she got sufficiently better to come to the office. As time went on, she improved and her fears and inhibitions began to diminish, though she never did develop any insight. She was too afraid of talking about psychological matters, she said. So over the months and eventually years of treatment, the only thing I ever did was to love her. Okay, so that's the sort of the case. And then there's this one last paragraph. This case illustrates the concept that a higher vibration, such as love, has a healing effect on a lower vibration, in the patient's case, fear. This love is the mechanism of reassurance, and very often we can quiet another person's fears by our mere physical presence and by the loving energy that we project to them and with which we surround them. It is not what we say, but the very fact of our presence that has the healing effect. Okay. So did you hear that? It's not what we say, but the fact of our presence that has the healing effect. It's like our energy, our consciousness, our level of consciousness has an effect on the people around us. When I read that, my jaw dropped because I've been thinking about this idea of presence being healing for several months now. And how do I teach it? How do I teach presence? So, reading it in a book, which is going to back everything up with science, and I already read the introduction and the preface and all of that, which already talked about lots of the science of it. But that's just like the 3 pages before chapter 1. So, I was just so like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I've been thinking about, how our presence alone can be positive and healing and can help people. So there's that. So I hope that if you're a coach and listening to this, that it gives you pause and helps you think about how does my presence on my coaching calls with my clients help or hurt, because I suppose it could hurt too, my client, right? How does it help? How can I be more present, or how can I improve the quality of my presence so that I can help my clients more? That's really what I want you to sit with, whether or not you ever do any work with me or join this program, I want you to think about, how can I move the needle in this way? Maybe it's not just simply about my client's thoughts and feelings and actions and results, right? Maybe them coming and showing up to the coaching calls, just that alone can be really healing, right? Maybe I don't always have to coach them. Maybe I can just validate their feelings. Maybe I can just send them loving thoughts, and that alone will be helpful. Okay. This is quite a big shift from the paradigm that I was taught by going through the life coach school and being certified there. Okay. So if it's a big shift, if you're resistant to this thought, I get it. You don't have to jump on board right away. Here's what I want to say for those who are not coaches, especially for the parents who are listening, which I'm guessing is just about all of you. What if our presence and our love for our children and our spouses is healing? What if that is enough? We in our culture, especially the Western culture, we're so caught up in, what should I do? What do I say? Like all the actions, right? And I know I've talked about this before too. We're so caught up in all the actions that I think we overlook some of the simplest things to consider, which is, what if your presence is really the only thing your kids want? What if they don't need you to make their lunches or to, I don't know, read them their book or help them with their homework or cook dinner or bathe them or buy them clothes or whatever it is we do for our kids and with our kids? What if the biggest thing is simply our energy, our attention, our time, our presence, right? Isn't that like mind blowing? What if by simply our presence, we can help our children? It makes me think about the power of Jesus Christ. Where does his power come from? We could say his power comes from Heavenly Father, but I think his power comes from his love of us. And yes, he took action. He did things. He died for us. He lived on the earth. He taught certain sermons. He, embodied everything that he taught. And all of that is so amazing and also so mind-blowing to me, how he did all those things. But what if all he had to do was come to earth and love us? Really, what if that's all it really was? And what if the love and the enormity of his love is shown in the things he did and said? Yeah. But we think it's the things he did and the things he said that heal us, that give us hope, all of that, right? But maybe those things just came out of his love for us, right? And maybe we can do the same for the people in our lives. I am so lit up by this idea because I'm learning that we can't always take action to get to the results we want. Sometimes people in our lives, our kids, our spouse, our parents, our siblings, our coworkers, whoever it is, sometimes they do and say things that are completely out of our control, right? And the only thing we can control is ourselves. It's how we think, how we feel, how we show up in the world. And what if it's not just, well, I can't change things for that. Like I can't make my kid come back to church. I can't make my kid, love Jesus Christ or Heavenly Father. I can't make them keep the Sabbath day holy or whatever those things are that we wish that the people around us would do. But what if by simply our presence and our love, we actually could? And we're not, because we're telling ourselves, well, I can't make a difference. I can't control them. There's nothing I can do. Instead of focusing on, what can I do? You know what I can do? I can love you. I think about the people I have met just from this podcast. I think about my fellow coaches who I rub shoulders with. I think about my own family. I think about my family members who I don't really have a relationship with. And I have, even myself, I have sometimes resigned myself to like, oh, well, there's nothing I can do. Now the ball is in their court. But now I'm thinking, what if there is something I can do? What if I can love them? What if I can love them from afar and that there is scientific evidence that that could be healing and helpful? Okay, that's enough for now. And so are you. Don't forget to enter the podcast giveaway. And if you're a coach, come check out Presence for Coaches. Go to danitabremmer.com to get more information. And if you're not a coach and this lights you on fire and you want to know more about how to be more present with the people in your life, go to my website, danitabremmer.com, and schedule a free session. Until next time, go be you and follow the spirit.